Raven didn't get her road name by accident. She'd earned it the same way every Hell's Angel earned their name, through years of proving herself, riding harder than anyone expected, and developing a reputation that preceded her wherever she went. They called her Raven because she was always watching, always noticing what others missed. Silent, sharp, and impossible to fool. At 42 years old, she was one of the few women who'd risen to a position of real authority in the Oakland chapter. Not a wife, not a girlfriend, not someone's old lady, a full-patch member who'd earned her cut through blood, loyalty, and a decade of service that no one could question. Tonight, she was making her usual rounds. The club owned several properties around Oakland, warehouses, garages, a couple of commercial buildings. Most of them were legitimate businesses, fronts that kept the money clean and the feds uninterested. But legitimate or not, they needed to be checked, secured, protected. The warehouse on 52nd Street was one of the biggest. During the day, it operated as an auto parts distribution center. Trucks came and went, orders were filled, employees did their jobs without knowing or caring who really owned the place. At night it was supposed to be empty, which is why Raven's instincts flared when she pulled her bike into the parking lot at 11:30 and saw a light on inside. She cut the engine and sat in the darkness, watching. The light was faint, coming from somewhere deep in the building, not the main floor. Could be nothing. Could be an employee who'd forgotten to clock out. Could be something else entirely. Raven had learnt a long time ago to trust her gut, and right now her gut was telling her something was wrong. She dismounted, removed her helmet, and approached the side entrance. The door was locked, as it should be, but she had keys to every property the club owned. She slipped inside without a sound. The warehouse floor was dark and quiet. Rows of shelving stretched toward the ceiling, stacked with boxes of alternators, brake pads, headlights, all the mundane pieces that kept cars running. During the day, this place hummed with activity. Now it felt like a tomb. The light was coming from the back, the maintenance area, where the cleaning supplies were kept and the janitors had their lockers. Raven moved toward it, her boots silent on the concrete floor. She wasn't armed, hadn't expected to need a weapon for a routine check, but she didn't need one. She'd handled worse with her bare hands. As she got closer, she heard sounds. Soft, metallic. Someone working on something. The clink of tools, the scrape of metal on metal. Raven pressed herself against the wall and peered around the corner. The maintenance room was small and cluttered. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting everything in a harsh, unflattering glow. Cleaning carts lined one wall. Mops and brooms hung from hooks. A row of battered lockers stood opposite, each one assigned to a member of the janitorial staff. In the middle of the room, sitting cross-legged on the floor, was a man. He was in his mid-30s, wearing worn jeans and a faded work shirt with the name Miguel stitched on the pocket. His dark hair was disheveled, his face lined with exhaustion. He was bent over something on the floor, his hands moving carefully, precisely. Raven's first thought was that he was stealing. The club's tools were kept in the maintenance area: wrenches, screwdrivers, power drills, valuable stuff that could be pawned for quick cash. It wouldn't be the first time an employee had helped themselves to things that didn't belong to them. But then she looked closer, and she saw what he was actually doing. Spread out on the floor around him were the pieces of a child's tricycle. Pink plastic wheels, a bent metal frame, a broken handlebar. The thing was ancient, scratched and dented, probably salvaged from a dumpster or a garage sale. It looked like it had been ridden hard by multiple children over many years. And this man, this janitor, this Miguel, was trying to fix it. He had a screwdriver in one hand and a pair of pliers in the other. A small pile of screws sat beside him, along with some wire and electrical tape. He was working on the front wheel assembly, trying to straighten a bent axle so the wheel would spin properly. His hands were trembling. Not from cold, the room was warm enough. Not from fear. He didn't know Raven was watching. He was trembling from sheer exhaustion, from the effort of keeping his eyes open and his fingers steady after what had clearly been a very long day. Raven watched him work, watched him mutter under his breath in Spanish, curse softly when a screw wouldn't seat properly, wipe his forehead with the back of his hand. He was completely absorbed in what he was doing, completely unaware that he was being observed. She looked at the lockers behind him. One of them was open, his, presumably, and taped to the inside of the door was a photograph. It showed a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with dark curly hair and a gap-toothed smile. She was wearing a princess dress and holding a stuffed, animella well-loved rabbit with one ear missing. The photo was worn at the edges, like it had been handled many times, like someone looked at it every day. Raven looked back at the tricycle, at the man trying to fix it with borrowed tools in the middle of the night. And she understood. This wasn't theft. This wasn't someone taking advantage of the club's property for personal gain. This was a father trying to give his daughter something, trying to fix a broken toy because he couldn't afford to buy a new one. He was using the club's tools because he didn't have his own. He was doing it at night because he didn't want anyone to know. And he was doing it here because this was the only place he had access to what he needed. Raven should have been angry. She should have confronted him, demanded an explanation, reported him to management for unauthorized use of company property. That was the protocol. That was what she was supposed to do. Instead, she stood in the shadows and watched a man try to straighten her bent axle so his daughter could ride a pink tricycle. Miguel had been working at the warehouse for 8 months. He'd taken the job because it was the only one he could get. His English wasn't great, his resume was thin, and he had a flaneur on his record possession with intent 10 years ago, a stupid mistake from a desperate time in his life. He'd done his time, cleaned himself up, tried to build something better. But that record followed him everywhere, closing doors before he could even knock. The janitor job paid minimum wage, no benefits, no security. But it was legal. It was honest. And it let him be there for his daughter. Sophia was 6 years old. She was the reason Miguel got out of bed every morning, the reason he worked double shifts whenever he could, the reason he'd stayed clean for 7 years and counting. Her mother, Miguel's ex-girlfriend, had left when Sophia was 2, unable to handle the reality of raising a child with a man who had nothing to offer. Miguel didn't blame her. He'd had nothing then, and he didn't have much more now. But he had Sophia, and Sophia had him, and that was enough. The tricycle had been her only request for her birthday. Not a new one. She knew better than to ask for things they couldn't afford. She'd seen an old one at a garage sale, pink and battered and missing a pedal, and her eyes had lit up like it was the most beautiful thing in the world. "Can we get it, Bobby? Please." The woman running the garage sale wanted $15. Miguel had 12 in his pocket. He'd been too proud to negotiate, too ashamed to explain that he couldn't afford even this small thing for his daughter. They'd walked away without the tricycle. Sophia hadn't cried. She never cried about things like that. She'd learnt too early that wanting didn't mean having, but Miguel had seen the disappointment in her eyes. That quiet acceptance that broke his heart more than tears ever could. The next day, he'd gone back. The garage sale was over, but the tricycle was sitting by the curb with the rest of the unsold junk, waiting for the trash pickup. Miguel had taken it. It wasn't stealing. It was garbage, abandoned, unwanted. He'd brought it home and hidden it in the closet, planning to fix it up before Sophia's birthday. That was 3 weeks ago. The birthday was tomorrow, and the tricycle was still broken. The front wheel wouldn't spin. The axle was bent, and no matter what Miguel did, he couldn't straighten it without the right tools. He'd tried pliers, a hammer, even a rock. Nothing worked. The wheel stayed stuck, useless, mocking him with its refusal to turn. He didn't have money for tools, didn't have money for a mechanic, didn't have money for a new tricycle, not even a used one. All he had was access to the warehouse and the maintenance room, where the club kept tools for the cleaning staff to use. So tonight, after his shift ended, Miguel had stayed. He'd waited until everyone else was gone, then slipped into the maintenance room and got into work. He knew it was wrong using the tools without permission, being in the building after hours. He knew he could lose his job if anyone found out. But he couldn't think about that. He could only think about Sophia's face when she saw the tricycle, fixed and ready to ride. About the smile she'd give him. The way she'd throw her arms around his neck and say, "Thank you, Poppy." That was worth the risk. That was worth anything. He'd been working for 2 hours now. His back ached, his eyes burned, and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. But he was making progress. The axle was almost straight. A few more adjustments, and the wheel would spin again. He was so focused on the work that he didn't hear the footsteps behind him. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Miguel spun around, his heart slamming into his throat. A woman stood in the doorway. She was tall and lean, with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid, and eyes that seemed to cut right through him. She was wearing a leather vest over a black t-shirt, and even in his panic, Miguel recognized the patches on that vest. Hell's Angels. His blood turned to ice. Everyone who worked at the warehouse knew who really owned the place. They didn't talk about it, didn't ask questions, just did their jobs and kept their heads down. The bikers came and went, checked on things, disappeared again. Miguel had seen them around but never spoken to them, never drawn their attention, until now. "I asked you a question." The woman stepped into the room, her gaze sweeping over the scene, the tricycle in pieces, the tools scattered on the floor. Miguel on his knees, looking like a man awaiting execution. "What are you doing here?" Miguel opened his mouth, but no words came out. His mind was blank with terror. He'd been caught by a Hell's Angel, using their tools without permission, trespassing after hours. His job was gone. Maybe more than his job. I can't explain." "Then explain." He looked at the tricycle, at the photograph of Sophia in his locker, at the bent axle in his trembling hands. "It's for my daughter," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Her birthday is tomorrow. I don't have." He stopped, swallowed, tried again. "I found this tricycle in the trash. I wanted to fix it for her. But I don't have tools. I don't have anything. So I used these. I know I shouldn't have. I know it's wrong. But she's never..." He couldn't finish. The words dissolved into a choked sound that might have been a sob if he'd let it out. Raven looked at him, looked at the tricycle, the tools, the photo of the little girl. Looked at this man who'd stayed after work to fix his daughter's birthday present because he had no other way to give her anything. She could report him. She probably should. Unauthorized use of club property was a serious issue, and setting a precedent of letting it slide was dangerous. If word got out that you could take from the club without consequences, everyone would start helping themselves. That was how respect eroded. That was how you lost control. But this wasn't theft. This wasn't someone taking advantage. This was a father trying to give his child a birthday gift. And Raven, despite everything she'd done and everything she'd become, remembered what that was like. She'd had a daughter once, a long time ago, in a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. She'd held her in her arms and made promises about protection, about love, about always being there. Promises she couldn't keep. Her daughter was gone now. Had been for 15 years. Lost to a custody battle that Raven couldn't win. Not with her record, not with her life. The courts had decided that a child was better off with anyone other than a Hell's Angel, and they'd taken her away. Raven hadn't seen her since she was 7 years old, but she remembered. She remembered what it felt like to want to give your child something, anything, to make them happy. To feel like you were failing them because you couldn't provide what other parents provided. To lie awake at night, wondering if they knew how much you loved them, or if they thought you'd simply stopped caring. She looked at Miguel, still kneeling on the floor, still waiting for judgment. He was shaking openly now, tears streaming down his face, all pretense of composure gone. "Please," he said, "I'll pay for any damage. I'll work extra shifts, whatever you want. Just please please let me finish. It's her birthday tomorrow. She's never had anything new, anything just for her. I just want her to have something." Raven made a decision. "Get up," she said. Miguel stared at her. "I said, get up. You can't work on that thing from the floor. You need the bench. Better light, better angle." She pointed to the workbench against the far wall. "Go on, move." Miguel stood up slowly, uncertain, afraid this was some kind of trick. But Raven just stepped back and watched him carry the tricycle pieces to the workbench. "The axle's bent," she said, coming up beside him to look at the damage. "You're never going to straighten it with pliers. You need heat, warm up the metal so it's malleable, then use a vise to hold it while you bend it back." She pointed to the corner. "There's a propane torch over there, and a vise bolted to the bench. You know how to use them?" Miguel shook his head. "Then pay attention. I'll show you once." For the next 30 minutes, Raven taught Miguel how to fix the tricycle. She showed him how to heat the metal evenly, how to clamp the axle in the vise, how to apply pressure gradually so it bent without breaking. She showed him how to replace the missing pedal with a piece of scrap metal, how to tighten the handlebars so they wouldn't wobble, how to lubricate the chain so it ran smooth. She didn't ask questions, didn't make small talk, just showed him what to do and stepped back while he did it, correcting him when he made mistakes, nodding when he got it right. By midnight, the tricycle was fixed. The wheels spun freely, the pedals turned, the handlebars were straight. It was still old and battered and pink, but it worked. It would ride. Miguel stood back and looked at it. His eyes were red, his hands were dirty, and he looked like he might collapse at any moment. But he was smiling. "Thank you," he said. "I don't know how to. Don't mention it." Raven's voice was flat, final. "I mean that literally. Don't mention this to anyone. Not your friends, not your co-workers, not your priest. As far as anyone knows, this never happened. Understand?" Miguel nodded quickly. "Good." She pulled out her phone and checked the time. "Get that thing out of here. Go home, get some sleep. And don't stay late again without permission. Next time, you might not be so lucky." Miguel grabbed the tricycle and headed for the door. He stopped, turned back. "My daughter's name is Sophia," he said. "She's 6 years old tomorrow. And you gave her a birthday. I don't know how to thank you for that." Raven looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned away. "Just be a good father. That's thanks enough." Miguel left. Raven stayed in the maintenance room, staring at the workbench where the tricycle had been, thinking about daughters and birthdays and all the ways the world could break you if you let it. Then she locked up and rode home through the empty streets, the wind cold on her face and the night silent around her. Raven didn't sleep that night. She lay in her bed in the small apartment she'd rented for 15 years, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what she'd done, thinking about what she should have done instead. She should have reported Miguel. That was the smart play. The club didn't tolerate employees using their property without permission, no matter how sympathetic the reason. You start making exceptions, you lose control. You lose control, you lose respect. You lose respect, you lose everything. But she hadn't reported him. She'd helped him. She'd spent 30 minutes teaching him how to fix a child's tricycle, and then she'd let him walk out with it. No consequences, no record, nothing. Why? She knew why. She'd seen that photo in his locker, seen the way his hands shook, seen the desperation in his eyes when he begged her to let him finish. And she'd remembered what it felt like to be a parent with nothing to give. Remembered the weight of that helplessness, the shame of it. She'd lost her daughter because of choices she'd made. Sophia wouldn't have to lose her father because of a mistake he made trying to give her something. But that didn't mean she was comfortable with it. Didn't mean she wasn't second-guessing herself every hour as the night crawled by. Around 6 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and went for a ride. That's what she always did. When her head was too full, got on her bike and rode until the wind emptied everything out. She took the back roads, the ones that wound through the hills outside Oakland, and she pushed the bike hard, leaning into curves, feeling the engine thunder beneath her. By the time she got back, it was almost 8. She showered, changed, and headed to the clubhouse. The Oakland chapter house was a converted warehouse in the industrial district, not far from the property where she'd found Miguel, actually. It was big and fortified, with iron gates and security cameras, and a parking lot that could hold 100 bikes. The main room was set up like a bar, with a long counter, scattered tables, and a stage in the back that nobody ever used. When Raven walked in, a few brothers were already there. Jackson, the president, was at the bar talking to Wheeler, the treasurer. Domino, the sergeant of arms, was playing pool by himself in the corner. They nodded at Raven as she entered, familiar, respectful, nothing more. She got coffee and took her usual seat at the end of the bar, where she could see the door and most of the room. Old habits. Jackson drifted over after a few minutes. He was in his late 50s, grey-bearded, built like a tank. He'd been president for 12 years, and he ran the chapter with a combination of ruthlessness and fairness that kept everyone in line. "You look like hell," he said. "Didn't sleep? Something on your mind?" Raven sipped her coffee. Just thinking. About what? She considered telling him. About Miguel, the tricycle, what she'd done, and why. Jackson was fair, he might understand. Or he might not. Hard to say. But she'd told Miguel not to mention it to anyone, and that had to cut both ways. If she wanted him to keep quiet, she had to keep quiet too. "Nothing important," she said. "Just one of those nights." Jackson studied her for a moment, then shrugged. "All right, but if you need to talk, you know where to find me." "I know." He went back to Wheeler. And Raven finished her coffee, and the morning went on like any other morning. Except it wasn't, because Raven couldn't stop thinking about what she'd seen in that maintenance room. About Miguel and his trembling hands and the photograph of his daughter. About what he was going home to, what his life must be like, what it meant to be that desperate and that devoted at the same time. She'd helped him fix the tricycle. But that wasn't enough. It was a bandage on a wound that needed stitches. A man like that, a man who'd stay after work to fix his daughter's birthday present with borrowed tools, who'd risk his job for the chance to see her smile. That man deserved more than one night of looking the other way. He deserved actual help. Around noon, Raven rode to the warehouse on 52nd Street. The day shift was in full swing. Trucks in the loading bays, workers moving inventory, the usual controlled chaos of a distribution center. Raven parked in the back and went in through the side entrance, same as the night before. She found the operations manager in his office, a nervous little man named Garrett, who knew who she was and clearly wished he didn't. "Miss Raven," he said, standing up quickly. "I didn't know you were coming today. Is there something I need to see an employee file? One of your janitors. Name's Miguel." Garrett blinked. "Miguel? Did he do something wrong? Because I can just the file." "Of course. Right away." He fumbled through his filing cabinet and pulled out a thin folder. Handed it over like it was a live grenade. Raven opened it and scanned the contents. Miguel Delgado, 36 years old. Address in East Oakland, one of the rough neighborhoods. Emergency contact listed as Sofia Delgado, his daughter, presumably. No wife, no other family. Employment history was sparse, a few warehouse jobs, nothing long-term. And there, at the bottom, the note she'd expected: felony conviction, possession with intent, served 2 years. Is he in trouble? Garrett asked again. Because he's been a good worker. Shows up on time, doesn't complain, stays late when we need him. If there is a problem, no problem. Raven closed the file and handed it back. What's he make? Excuse me. His salary. What do you pay him? Oh, Garrett checked the file. Minimum wage, same as all the janitorial staff. Benefits? No. Part-time employees aren't eligible. How many hours does he work? 30, usually. Sometimes more if we have extra cleaning needs. 30 hours a week at minimum wage. Raven did the math in her head. After taxes, that was barely enough to cover rent in the cheapest parts of Oakland, let alone food, utilities, transportation, and he had a kid who needed clothes and school supplies and medicine when she got sick. No wonder he couldn't afford a $15 tricycle. I want him full-time, Raven said. Garrett stared at her. I'm sorry, full-time. 40 hours a week, benefits, the whole package. Make it happen. But the budget, I'd have to get approval from. You're getting approval from me. I'll clear it with Jackson. Raven affixed him with a look. This isn't a request, Garrett. Garrett swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am. I'll process the paperwork today. Good. Raven turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. He doesn't know about this conversation. As far as he's concerned, this is a normal promotion based on job performance. You understand? I understand. Good. She walked out of the office and into the warehouse floor. Stood there for a moment, watching the workers move through their tasks, the trucks come and go, the ordinary machinery of an ordinary day. She'd just used her position in the club to help a stranger, a man she'd met once for 30 minutes in the middle of the night. She'd intervened in his life without his knowledge or consent, made decisions that would affect him and his daughter, all because of what, a photograph in a locker, a broken tricycle? Because she'd had a daughter once, and she'd lost her, and she couldn't get her back. But maybe she could do something for someone else's daughter. Maybe she could make one small thing right in a world that was mostly wrong. Was that enough? Was that a good enough reason? Raven didn't know. But it was the reason she had, and it would have to do. That night, she went back to the warehouse after closing. Not to check on anything, not because she expected to find Miguel there again. She went because she needed to see the maintenance room one more time, to stand in the place where something had shifted inside her and try to understand what it meant. The room was empty. The tools were put away, the lockers closed, the floor clean. No sign of what had happened the night before. But Raven stood there anyway, looked at the locker where the photograph had been, Thought about Miguel riding home with the tricycle, somehow balanced on his bike or strapped to his back or however he'd managed it. Thought about Sophia waking up this morning and seeing that someone had fixed it for her, that someone had given her something just for her. Had she smiled? Had she thrown her arms around her father's neck? Had she ridden the tricycle up and down the sidewalk, pink and battered and perfect? Raven hoped so. She'd probably never know, but she hoped so. She was about to leave when she noticed something on the workbench. A piece of paper, folded in half, with a word written on the front. Raven. She picked it up and unfolded it. Inside was a child's drawing. Crayon on lined paper, the kind from a school notebook. It showed 3 figures, a man, a woman, and a little girl. The man and the girl were holding hands. The woman was standing a little apart, but she was smiling, and there were birds around her head. At the bottom, in careful block letters, someone had written, "Thank you for helping my Poppy. Love, Sophia." Raven stared at the drawing for a long time. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in years, had trained herself out of it, had decided that tears were weakness, and weakness was death in this life. But something inside her cracked a little. Some wall she'd built, some defense she'd maintained. She folded the drawing carefully and put it in her pocket. Then she left the warehouse and rode home through the dark streets, thinking about fathers and daughters, and all the ways love could survive, even when everything else was broken. 2 weeks passed. Raven went about her business club meetings, property checks, the occasional ride with her brothers. She didn't go back to the warehouse on 52nd Street. Didn't ask Garrett about Miguel. Didn't do anything that might suggest she was paying attention to a part-time janitor who had been promoted to full-time. But she kept the drawing. Sophia's drawing. She'd taped it to the inside of her closet door, where no one would see it but her. Sometimes late at night, she'd look at it and think about the little girl who'd made it, about her gap-toothed smile in the photograph, about her father's trembling hands. She told herself it was nothing. A moment of weakness quickly passed. She'd helped someone who needed helping, and now it was done. Time to move on. But it wasn't done. She could feel it, like a thread that had been pulled, unraveling something she'd thought was settled. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Miguel, the janitor from the warehouse. I need to talk to you, please." Raven stared at the message. How the hell had he gotten her number? She hadn't given it to him. Hadn't given it to anyone at the warehouse. She wrote back, "How did you get this number?" The reply came quickly. "I asked Garrett. Told him I needed to thank you for something. He didn't want to give it to me, but I kept asking. Please, it's important." Raven should have ignored it. Should have told Garrett to mind his own business. Should have deleted the number and moved on. Whatever Miguel wanted, it wasn't her problem. She'd done enough. But she didn't ignore it. "Where do you want to meet?" He suggested a park near his apartment. A public place, neutral ground, smart. He was being careful, not wanting to presume, not wanting to cross any lines. She agreed to meet him the next day at noon. The park was a small square of grass and trees wedged between apartment buildings, the kind of place where mothers brought their kids and old men played chess. When Raven arrived, Miguel was already there, sitting on a bench near the playground. He was wearing clean clothes, not work clothes, and he'd shaved. He looked nervous. Raven sat down beside him without greeting. "This better be important." "It is." He was clutching something in his hands, an envelope thick with papers. "I need to explain something. And then, I need to ask you for help. I already helped you. We're even." "No, we're not. You don't understand what you did for me." He took a breath, steadying himself. "You didn't just fix a tricycle. You gave my daughter a reason to believe. She's had so little, her whole life she's had so little, And most kids, when they have nothing, they stop hoping. They learn that wanting things just leads to disappointment. But Sophia, she never stopped hoping. She always believed that something good would come. And I was so afraid that I was going to let her down. That she'd ask for this one thing, this broken tricycle from a garage sale, and I wouldn't be able to give it to her. And finally she'd learn the lesson I never wanted her to learn. He looked at Raven, his eyes wet. But then you helped me, and I gave her the tricycle, and she rode it all day, up and down the sidewalk, and she was so happy. And she asked me how I fixed it, and I told her someone helped me. A stranger who didn't have to help but did anyway. And, you know what she said? Raven shook her head. She said, "See, Poppy, I told you good things happen if you wait for them." Miguel wiped his eyes. You gave her that. You let her keep believing. That's worth more than anything. Raven didn't know what to say. She looked away, at the playground, at the kids climbing and swinging and shouting, normal kids with normal lives. "You said you needed help," she said finally. "What kind of help?" Miguel handed her the envelope. "Open it." She did. Inside were documents, medical records, insurance forms, letters from doctors. She scanned them, trying to make sense of the medical terminology. "Sophia's sick," Miguel said quietly. "She has a heart condition. She was born with it, a defect in one of the valves. When she was a baby, they said she'd need surgery eventually, but not yet. She was too small, too weak. They wanted to wait until she was older, until she was strong enough to survive the operation. And now they say it's time. The valve is failing. She needs surgery in the next 3 months, or..." He stopped, couldn't finish the sentence. Raven looked at the documents, at the diagnosis, the recommended procedure, the expected outcomes, at the cost estimates from the hospital. The numbers were staggering, even with insurance, which Miguel probably didn't have. The out-of-pocket expenses would be tens of thousands of dollars. Without insurance, it would be hundreds of thousands. More money than a minimum-of-wage janitor would see in a lifetime. "I've been trying to find a way," Miguel said. "I've applied for assistance programs, charity care, everything I can think of. But there are waiting lists. So many people who need help, and not enough help to go around. And I don't have time to wait." "Sophia doesn't have time." He looked at her, and Raven saw the same desperation she'd seen in the maintenance room, but worse now, deeper, a father facing the unthinkable. "I'm not asking you for money," he said. "I know that's not, I know I have no right, but you're connected to people, important people, and I thought maybe you might know someone, a doctor, a hospital administrator, someone who could move Sophia up the waiting list, get her the surgery before it's too late." He reached out and gripped her arm. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll work for you, for your club, whatever you need. I'll pay it back somehow, I swear. Just please, please help me save my daughter." Raven looked at his hand on her arm, at the papers in her lap, at the medical records documenting the slow failure of a 6-year-old's heart. She thought about Sophia, about the drawing in her closet, about what it would feel like to be that little girl full of hope and belief, not knowing that her body was betraying her. And she thought about her own daughter, the one she'd lost, the one she'd never see again. "I need to make some calls," she said. Miguel's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm not making promises, but I'll see what I can do." She stood up, taking the envelope with her. Miguel stood too, looking like he wanted to hug her and knew he shouldn't. "Whatever happens," he said, "thank you for listening, for not just walking away." Raven looked at him. This man who'd stumbled into her life by accident, who'd awakened something in her she'd thought was dead. "I'll be in touch," she said. Then she walked away, the envelope in her hand, the weight of another life on her shoulders. That night, Raven made calls. She started with the club's lawyer, a sharp woman named Delilah, who handled all their legal issues and wasn't above bending rules when necessary. Then she called a doctor the club had on retainer, a surgeon who patched up brothers when they couldn't go to a regular hospital. Then she called in favors from people who owed her, people who feared her, people who respected her enough to listen when she asked. She told them about Sophia, about her heart condition, the surgery she needed, the father who couldn't afford it. She asked what could be done. The answers came slowly over the next few days. Some were dead ends, programs full, waiting lists too long, bureaucratic hurdles too high, but some were promising. A charity that specialized in pediatric heart surgery, a hospital that had a compassionate care fund, a surgeon who might be willing to work pro bono if the case was compelling enough. Raven gathered the information, made more calls, pushed harder. She used the club's name when she had to, not as a threat, just as weight. People paid attention when the Hells Angels were involved. Doors opened that might have stayed closed. By the end of the week, she had a plan. She met Miguel at the same park, same bench. He looked worse than before, more tired, more worn. The stress was eating him alive. "I found something," she said without preamble. "A surgeon at UCSF. One of the best in the country for pediatric cardiac cases. He's reviewed Sophia's records, and he's willing to do the surgery." Miguel's eyes went wide. "He's what? How?" "He has a program for families who can't pay. Takes on a few cases a year, no charge. I convinced him Sophia should be one of them. But how? The waiting lists. I know people. And I can be very persuasive." Raven handed him a folder. "The surgery is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. You'll need to be there for a pre-op appointment starting next week. All the details are in there." Miguel took the folder with shaking hands. He opened it, scanned the documents, saw the hospital logo, the surgeon's name, the dates and times. "This is real," he said. "This is actually real. It's real." He looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. "Why? Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't know Sophia. We're nothing to you." Raven considered the question. She'd been asking herself the same thing for weeks. "I had a daughter," she said finally, "a long time ago. I lost her not to sickness, but to the choices I made, the life I chose. I haven't seen her in 15 years, and I probably never will." She looked at the playground, at the kids who didn't know how lucky they were. "I can't get her back. I can't fix what I broke. But maybe I can do something for someone else's daughter. Maybe that's enough." Miguel was silent for a moment. Then he said, "What's her name?" "Your daughter?" "Emily. That's a beautiful name. She was a beautiful kid." They sat together in silence, two parents carrying losses they couldn't speak about. Then Miguel said, "I'd like you to meet Sophia, properly. Not as a stranger who helped me once, but as ... I don't know. A friend, maybe. I don't know if I'm capable of being a friend. Neither do the first, but I'd like to try." Raven looked at him. This man who'd lost everything and kept going. Who'd fixed a broken tricycle in the middle of the night so his daughter could believe in good things. "Okay," she said. "I'd like that too." She met Sophia on a Saturday afternoon. Miguel's apartment was small, 2 bedrooms in a building that had seen better days, with stained carpet and walls that needed painting. But it was clean, and there were touches everywhere of a father trying to make a home. Drawings taped to the refrigerator. A shelf of children's books, well worn from reading. A corner of the living room set up as a play area, with the pink tricycle fixed and gleaming, taking pride of place. Sophia was waiting on the couch when Raven arrived. She was smaller than Raven expected, 6 years old, but looking younger. delicate in a way that might have been her natural build, or might have been her heart slowly failing. She had her father's dark hair and eyes, and when she smiled, Raven could see why Miguel would do anything for her. "You're the lady who helped fix my tricycle," Sophia said. "That's right. Poppy said you stayed up really late to do it. He said you have a lot of tools." "I do." Sophia considered this. "Do you have a pink screwdriver? Because I think pink screwdrivers would be the best." Raven surprised herself by almost smiling. "I don't, but I'll keep an eye out for one, okay. Do you want to see my room? I have a fish. His name is Bubbles. I'd like that." She let Sophia take her hand and lead her to the bedroom. It was tiny, barely enough room for a twin bed and a small dresser, but it was Sophia's, and she was proud of it. The walls were covered with drawings and posters. A stuffed rabbit with one ear missing sat on the pillow. And on the dresser was a fish tank with a single goldfish swimming in circles. "That's Bubbles," Sophia said. "He's my best friend besides Poppy. He's a good listener. That's important. Do you have a best friend?" Raven thought about the question. The honest answer was no. She had brothers in the club, people she'd ride with and fight beside, but best friends. That wasn't how her life worked. "Not really," she said. "That's sad. Everyone should have a best friend." Sophia looked at her thoughtfully. "Maybe I could be your best friend. If you want." Raven felt something shift in her chest. That cracking feeling again. The one she didn't have a name for. "Maybe," she said. They went back to the living room, where Miguel was setting out glasses of juice. He looked at Raven with an expression she couldn't quite read: gratitude, uncertainty, hope. "I told Sophia about the surgery," he said. "She knows she's going to the hospital." "Are you scared?" Raven asked the girl. Sophia shrugged a little. "But Poppy says the doctors are going to fix my heart so it works better. And then I can run and play and ride my tricycle for a really long time." She looked at Raven. "Are you going to come visit me at the hospital?" Raven looked at Miguel. He nodded slightly. "If you want me to," she said. "I want you to. Poppy says you're a good person even though you look scary." Miguel winced. "Sophia." But Raven laughed. Actually laughed, a sound she wasn't sure she'd made in years. "He's right," she said. "I am scary. But I try to use it for good." The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Raven took the day off. Told Jackson she had personal business, didn't elaborate. He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. That was one of the things she appreciated about him. She rode to the hospital at dawn. Miguel and Sophia were already there, in the pre-op area. Sophia in a hospital gown, and Miguel looking like he hadn't slept in days. Other families were around them, other parents with sick children, all of them wearing the same expression of fear and hope and desperate prayer. Sophia's face lit up when she saw Raven. "You came. I said I would, I know. But sometimes people say things and don't do them. But you did them." Raven sat down beside the bed. Sophia was hooked up to monitors, IVs in her arm, but she seemed calm, calmer than her father, certainly. "Are you scared?" Raven asked. "A little," Sophia admitted. "But I told Bubbles I'd be back soon, and I don't want to lie to him. That's a good reason not to be scared." The surgeon came in, Dr. Okongwe, a tall man with kind eyes and steady hands. He explained the procedure, the risks, the expected recovery time. He was gentle but honest, and Raven could see why he was one of the best. "We're going to take good care of her," he told Miguel. "I've done this surgery many times." "She's in good hands." Miguel nodded, unable to speak. Then it was time. The nurses came to take Sophia to the operating room. Miguel kissed her forehead, told her he loved her, promised he'd be there when she woke up. "Raven," Sophia said as they wheeled her away. "Yeah? Will you take care of Poppy while I'm sleeping? He gets scared when I'm not there." Raven looked at Miguel. who was trying very hard not to break down. "I will," she said. Sophia smiled, that gap-toothed smile, the one that made Raven's chest hurt, and then she was gone through the double doors, and there was nothing left to do but wait. The surgery took 6 hours. 6 hours of sitting in a waiting room with Miguel, drinking bad coffee, watching the clock, saying almost nothing. Other families came and went around them, receiving good news, receiving bad news, receiving the worst news of their lives. The waiting room was a crucible of every human emotion, concentrated and raw. Miguel prayed. Raven didn't. She'd given up on that a long time ago, but she sat with him while he did, and she hoped that counted for something. Around 2 in the afternoon, Dr. Okonkwo came through the doors. Miguel was on his feet instantly. "Is she? She's out of surgery." "Everything went well." The doctor smiled. "The valve has been replaced. Her heart is already functioning better than it has in years. She's going to need recovery time and follow-up care, but the prognosis is excellent. She's going to be fine." Miguel collapsed. Not dramatically. He just sat down hard on the chair behind him, like his legs had stopped working. He put his head in his hands and sobbed. Deep, heaving sobs that came from somewhere primal. Raven stood there, not knowing what to do. She wasn't good at this, at comfort, at tenderness, at the human things that normal people did without thinking. But she put her hand on his shoulder, and she left it there while he cried. Sophia woke up 3 hours later. She was groggy and confused, but she was alive, and her heart was beating strong and steady on the monitors. Miguel held her hand and cried some more, and Sophia told him not to be sad because she was fine. Couldn't he see? Raven stayed in the background. This was their moment, father and daughter, and she didn't want to intrude. But before she left, Sophia called out to her. "Raven?" She came to the bedside. "Yeah, thank you for taking care of Poppy, and for helping with my tricycle. And for," she yawned, the anesthesia still pulling at her, "for being my friend." Raven looked at this little girl, this stranger's daughter who'd somehow become something else, something more. "You're welcome," she said. "Get some rest. Will you come back?" "I'll come back." Sophia smiled and closed her eyes, and Raven slipped out of the room before anyone could see her face. The weeks that followed were strange. Raven visited the hospital every few days, brought Sophia books and puzzles, and, eventually, a pink screwdriver that she'd found at a hardware store. Sophia was delighted, said it was the best present she'd ever gotten, except for the tricycle. When Sophia was discharged, Raven helped Miguel bring her home. She carried the balloons and the stuffed animals, while he carried his daughter. And for a moment, walking from the hospital lobby, they looked like a family. They weren't. Raven knew that. This wasn't her life, wasn't her place. She was an outsider who'd stumbled in and would eventually stumble out again. But it felt like something she hadn't felt in a long time. One night, about a month after the surgery, Raven went to the clubhouse for a meeting. Regular business, nothing unusual. But when it was over, and the brothers were drinking and talking, Jackson pulled her aside. "Got something I need to tell you," he said. Raven tensed. "What?" "The guys have been talking. About you and the janitor, the sick kid." Raven's stomach dropped. She'd been careful, hadn't told anyone, hadn't made it public. But secrets had a way of getting out, especially in the club. "What about it?" she said carefully. "They know you paid for the surgery, or arranged it, whatever. They know you've been visiting the hospital, spending time with the family. Is that a problem?" Jackson looked at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "No, it's not a problem. Some of the guys think it's soft, think you're going sentimental in your old age." He shrugged. "But most of them respect it. They think it took guts, doing something like that. using your position to help someone instead of just yourself. Raven didn't know what to say. Look, Jackson continued, we're not angels. We do what we have to do, and we don't apologize for it. But that doesn't mean we can't do good sometimes. Doesn't mean we can't be more than what people think we are. He put his hand on her shoulder. You did a good thing, Raven. Don't let anyone tell you different. He walked away and Raven stood there, processing what had just happened. She'd expected backlash, criticism. The club wasn't supposed to be charitable. Wasn't supposed to care about janitors and sick kids and single fathers trying to make ends meet. But maybe Jackson was right. Maybe there was room for more than one thing. Maybe you could be hard and soft at the same time. Maybe even devils could have hearts. 6 months later, Raven stood in Miguel's apartment, watching Sophia ride her tricycle up and down the hallway. She was bigger now, stronger. The surgery had worked. Her heart was healthy. Her energy was boundless, and she'd outgrown the tricycle by at least a year. She needed something bigger. I have something for you, Raven said. She led Sophia outside, to the parking lot where her bike was parked. But next to the bike was something else. A bicycle. Brand new. Pink, with streamers on the handlebars and training wheels on the back. Sophia's eyes went huge. Is that for me? Happy birthday. Again. Sophia ran to the bicycle, ran her hands over the frame, touched the streamers like they were made of gold. Look, Poppy, she shouted. Look what Raven got me. Miguel came outside, saw the bicycle and stopped dead. He looked at Raven with an expression she still couldn't quite read. You didn't have to do that, he said. I know, it's too much. It's a bicycle. It's not too much. Raven, let me do this. Please. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Thank you, he said quietly. For everything. I don't have words for what you've done. You don't need words. Just take care of her. I will. I always will. Sophia was already on the bicycle, pedaling in wobbly circles, laughing with pure joy. Miguel went to help her, to steady her, to run alongside her as she learned to balance. Raven watched them, father and daughter, the family she'd helped save. Then she looked at the bicycle again, at the frame, where she'd had something added. A small carving in the metal, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. The Hells Angels emblem. Not as a claim, not as a brand, just as a reminder that sometimes, even from unexpected places, good things could come. Sometimes, even devils could have hearts.